Gonna take a few seconds. Gonna take a few seconds. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Research and Life podcast. Today's conversation is on navigating the master's and PhD programs. My name is Dr. Joylene Chepkorir, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. I'm so delighted to be joined by Dr. Bernice Durozo, a fellow nurse scientist and postdoctoral fellow at Duke University. If you have never heard of Duke University, it's a very prestigious university, so we are very fortunate to have Bernice here. Bernice and I started the PhD program in 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a very challenging time to start a PhD program online. And Dr. Bernice is a very knowledgeable nurse scientist, a very passionate researcher on sexual and reproductive health and wellness. In addition to a PhD, she has a master's in nursing and specialized in addiction medicine, infectious disease, inpatient obstetrics, and so much more. She just gave us only a few of her credentials. She has nearly 2 decades of healthcare experience. Together, we'll share lessons from our own journeys as master's and PhD students, and then we'll discuss common challenges, opportunities, some of just practical advice on choosing a program, securing funding, finding the right mentor, and balancing graduate school with life, and then building a successful research and practice career. We will also answer your questions, so please feel free to type in the chat if you have any. So, welcome, Bernice. First of all, could you please tell us about your journey into graduate school? Just a quick intro to begin with.
Yes, thank you so much, Joy. It's of course a pleasure to be here. Like you've mentioned, we started the program together, and it's been such a wonderful journey just going alongside with you, despite the ups and downs, which I'm sure we'll get into during this conversation. My journey to graduate school, it definitely wasn't linear. So I actually started as a bio major in undergrad. I did bench science. I thought I wanted to go to med school. For some reason, I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. There was no rhyme or reason looking back as to why anesthesia. And then during my time there, I was, of course, getting involved in campus life, trying to create a club so students could get acclimated to the health center. And in that journey, I met a nurse practitioner, Patricia Zapatak, who is near and dear to my heart. And she introduced me to all the possibilities of nursing. And that led to me finishing my undergraduate degree in bio and psych. And then I worked for a year doing some research and then went back to nursing school. And during my time in nursing school, I just kind of was figuring out what specialty I wanted to go into. And then I ultimately practiced on labor and delivery. I did some emergency medicine work. And what ultimately led me into grad school was systemic racism because I ended up finding out a person that I helped train and support was making more money than me. And when I inquired about that. I was told we really shouldn't be discussing our salaries, and it didn't quite make sense to me based on, as you know, with nursing, it's really your credentials, your time, your experience, your any certifications. That's kind of what makes your money. So it didn't really make sense. So literally that night, I applied to grad school and moved right along after that. I went on to become a nurse practitioner.
Interesting. I like the part that you mentioned that your journey into graduate school was non-linear, and it's unfortunate that some of the things that led you into graduate school were systemic racism, which is still an issue. But I'm glad you took it as a challenge and you took it upon yourself to really combat that and making sure that you have the right credentials so that nobody can dismiss you. So I also didn't start out thinking I was going to be a nurse and then a nurse scientist. In fact, it's my mother that wanted to be a nurse. And then that's where the conversation started about nursing and the field in nursing, and I started to explore it. So I'm really glad that our non-linear journeys brought us together into nursing practice and nursing science. And congratulations, by the way, on your journey. It's not an easy journey to do a Master of Science in Nursing and then a PhD in nursing and continue that research pathway. You have already mentioned about what motivated you to continue your education. Is there anything that you may have left out, particularly the PhD?
Yes. So after doing my master's, I went to Sacred Heart University. I had a wonderful experience. There's people I've met there I still speak with to this day. I I was just done. I was like, no more school. I was older, like settling into my career. I wanted like a family and things like that. But then I don't know why it had not connected for me yet, because as I said, like systemic racism was kind of what drew me into getting a master's degree. So then, as I was practicing as a nurse practitioner, what really drove me to getting a PhD was seeing how, oh, these things that are happening in a social setting are also happening in the healthcare system. So seeing time and time again, Black women being diagnosed. I worked in a Ryan White clinic. I helped restart up in Stanford. And seeing time and time again when women were diagnosed, they had no idea why, how, they had no idea PrEP. And at that point, PrEP been around for many, many years. So really frustration of like how deep a lot of the systemic barriers go is what led me to getting a PhD. I was in DC having at a conference, having some conversations, and someone mentioned to me, well, have you ever considered a PhD? You have a very analytical mind. And I said, no, I've done bench science research already. I'm not interested. I did not really know about like the social sciences. Like I did not have like practical experience or hands-on experience in that lane. And then I had a chance to speak to one of my friends, Dr. Maureen Siebert, who's married now, so she has a different last name actually, forgive me. And she had a PhD, just talking to her about the difference between a PhD and a DNP. And then that is what ultimately led me to pursue a PhD. But it came from a lot of frustrations, a lot of screaming, what the hell are we doing if we're practicing evidence-based medicine? Why is the evidence leading to these outcomes? And then I ended up at Johns Hopkins.
That is wonderful. I like how you used each experience in your career journey as a stepping stone to the next. As a nurse at bedside in a medical oncology unit, I also didn't know I was gonna do a PhD right after. In fact, it was from the advanced cancer cases that I witnessed that made me want to think about cancer prevention research. And cervical cancer and breast cancers were the two that I was already working on in the community as I didn't even have a name then. I would say a cancer advocate. I was just literally volunteering in the community, teaching people about how to screen for breast cancer, doing breast self exams, and the fact that they should go get a visual inspection of their cervix to see if they have cervical cancer symptoms. So but I do really like your journey and how you use every lesson and every challenge as a stepping stone to your next academic milestone.
Yeah, thank you. Guys,
So,
where
you're
we really,
welcome.
yeah, hearing your journey, I didn't know about that part of it, but oftentimes we talk about the things we've gone through to get us to where we're at, and it seems like there's a lot of synergy in our journeys.
Great. So, let's now talk about a person who's considering graduate school and people already in graduate school. How does someone know they're ready for a master's or PhD programs? It seems like for both of us, there wasn't really a timeline where we had scheduled to do all these degrees. How does someone know they are ready, or is there ever a time that somebody should really consider starting graduate school?
Yeah, I get the readiness question all the time. I don't really think you're ever gonna feel completely ready.
Mhm,
I necessarily feel ready for all the things that the journey I went on. But I think once your questions start moving beyond your comfort zone, and I
mhm,
think you're constantly thinking there has to be a better way, and the answers aren't there. And I'm talking about for a PhD, like new knowledge generation. You're constantly wondering there has to be a better way. You're not able to find out the better way because the literature is not there, something's not there, no one's able to fill that gap.
mhm,
That might be you that needs to step into that gap. So I personally think you sometimes just have to leap before you feel fully ready, and especially when we're talking about Black and Brown women in particular. I always talk about like women, Black and Brown people.
mhm.
Um, I think there's a lot of things in society in these systems where we may never fully feel ready to embark on these things. So if we're waiting on that, I don't think we're ever going to do those things. So yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying I don't think there's a going to be a readiness.
Right, and I think that goes to everything. I recently saw a quote that said, if you wait until you're ready, you'll never start. And like you mentioned, it speaks to not just graduate school, especially for the minority groups and first generation scholars who have never seen people in their family do it. They just have to decide that, okay, I'm going to break the cycle. Let me just start graduate school. Let me see where it takes me. Let me take this leap of faith, like you mentioned. So, thank you for that wonderful response. So, along those lines, how does someone choose between a master's and a PhD? For me, unlike you, I didn't do a Master of Science in Nursing, but I did do a Master of Science in Global Health Policy. And that was around the same time I was doing PhD, and there were circumstances that led me to take that route. But I want to hear you first.
Yeah, when people ask me about that, because I do think, especially economically, we'll get into like all the sacrifices you make in pursuing higher education. It has to make sense, and you have to understand like what you're going to be using it for. So to me, a master's generally teaches you how to use knowledge. So like as a clinician, as a nurse scientist, as a nurse practitioner, I learned how to diagnose. I learned how to clinically manage patients through my master's degree. And a PhD teaches you how to create new knowledge. So, how to ask interesting questions, how to find or look into those things that aren't necessarily there, and how to connect the dots or create new dots. So, one or the other isn't necessarily better. It's just completely different. There's intersections, but they're different career trajectories. So it depends what you want to do, and or you could do both. You could be a clinician scientist or a nurse practitioner scientist as well. So it really depends on what your long-term goals is going to be and where you best see yourself contributing to the outcomes that you're looking to tackle.
Yeah, and I really do like programs that I'll give space to people who, for instance, have decided they are gonna do research and they don't have to go through the master's route. If you're interested in creating knowledge that, like you've mentioned, there's no need to waste time applying knowledge that somebody has already, for knowledge that has been created. You go create, you go design, go innovate, and create new knowledge. So thank you, Bernice, for that response. So, when it came to doing a PhD for me, it was intimidating to think about it. Mentioning the word creating knowledge, could you talk about that, Bernice? Like, what does creating knowledge really involve, even from your own research? What did you create, for instance? Just so people understand that when we talk about PhD and creating knowledge, we are not reinventing the wheel here. I really wanted to simplify it for the audience, if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Because you hear people say there's nothing new under the sun. However, based on my work, especially your work as well, doing global health work and looking at the disparities in cancer outcomes, and even now with digital health, there are ways to ask interesting questions within things that already exist. Considering the work we do with minoritized communities from a health equity lens, from an intersectionality lens, the questions we ask are sometimes already about white people. There's already answers around that's rooted in stigma and stereotypes. So you'll see, for example, with my work around Black women and HIV, you'll see some people say, oh, Black women are more promiscuous. That is why they have more HIV prevalence among all women, and that's not true. So, new knowledge would be understanding, which is some of the work I've done, the social, the structural, and the political determinants of HIV outcomes among Black women or sexual reproductive health outcomes among Black women, and doing that in a different way. So, you may find people often do surveys. I did multi methods. So, I did surveys and I interviewed. So, that's creating new perspectives, new knowledge into the literature. To oftentimes what we're doing is combating and challenging legacy of racism, misogynoir that's in the literature, that's impacting the lives of people because we practice evidence-based medicine.
Great answer, Bernice. I wish somebody had defined it to me that way when I was trying to understand what a PhD is and when I was applying for a PhD. So thank you. I'm not even going to add to that. I really hope the audience can get that, especially for somebody who is, has to consider just doing the PhD as opposed to going through the master's route. People think master's to PhD is ideal, but not for everyone, especially in the financial aspect, like you had mentioned before. So thank you. Are there any other questions people should ask themselves before doing a PhD? Did we miss anything? I think you had mentioned, and then along those lines, I think we've already mentioned the fact that people really can go right into PhD without doing a master's. I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask yourself, and I think I'm asking myself that question more and more now in this political climate and as a postdoc, like what do you want your everyday work life to actually look like?
Yeah.
And what impact do you really want to have? Like, is it important to you to be a PI, like a principal investigator of the research, or are you somebody who wants to be the person doing the thing, but having maybe some input here and there, and you could collaborate with a PhD trained scientist? Um, I think those are two critical things to ask yourself when you're deciding whether you're going to do a master's or a PhD. And then, and do you enjoy or are you capable of asking questions that no one has really answered? Are you into reading? Because I meet a lot of people reach out to me, especially on social media, and say, oh, I'm interested in studying this. This is a question I have. And because it's such a small world, you know people's work, you're like, oh, this person answered this. Just the other day, someone messaged me asking me about something who one of my mentors, Dr. Shamika Thorpe, has tons of literature on. You have to be curious. You have to have a genuine interest and passion for learning because it's a lot of reading to find that quote unquote gap.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things you really have to sit and be honest with yourself with uh, um, when considering pursuing higher education.
Great. I think the big word there is curiosity. And the fact that this is a space where you really have to understand the gaps in research so that you can innovate and come up with your contribution to the field that you want to contribute to. Thank you. So back to the same on choosing a graduate program. How should somebody approach it? You can, choose any way that you want to describe this, but there are just so many factors that somebody should consider when selecting a program in terms of at personal level, at the university level, the faculty within the university. Why is that program a good fit at that time? I know, for instance, right now, AI is the big thing, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to do AI research and every prospective scholar should consider AI research as their priority. Could you please talk about these factors that need to be considered when selecting the right program?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think that weighing the reputation of an institution versus a mentor and actual having mentors within that institution that you could not only vibe with, but also have a collaborative relationship for years. This is not like a master's where you can maybe do in 2 years. This is like a 3 year plus journey, and then a lifelong journey too, because oftentimes we're not married, but tied with our academic advisors, mentors in a very unique way as a PhD. So I have people reach out to me all the time, like, oh, you went to Hopkins. I want to go to Hopkins. And my first question is why? What is it about Hopkins that you're looking to pursue? If they're not talking to me about, oh, I saw Dr. Alexander's work on IPV, and I'm really interested in understanding this, and that, and I've been following her work. Or, oh, I saw, you know, Dean Zanton's work on, the community level impacts that she's made, and restructuring people. It's not to that, and it's just for the reputation of the institution. I have to have a like very serious conversation with them because we have to move beyond the reputation of institutions when we're talking about higher education. There's so much more nuances and things that goes into you as a scholar at the end that you need to take into consideration. Can you get that at a big name institution? Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I went to Hopkins. I'm at Duke now. My mentor, Dr. Shanita Randolph, my postdoc mentor, I absolutely love her. We have a great relationship. There's so much synergy in our work, and I learn a ton from her. Um, but it is something to consider when you're choosing an institution. And this might be controversial or unpopular opinion. I say go where the mentor is versus the institution. Um, Prestige and the names of these big schools, they do open doors. I would be lying if I would say like people don't give you a level of credibility when you come from institutions. However, mentorship is what's going to teach you how to walk through these doors, how to maintain through these doors, and to also like honor like your humanity as you're existing in these spaces as well. So that is number one for me when choosing a program. Reputation versus mentorship. You have to know who's there and how you're going to be positioned and situated and surviving within that institution.
Thank you. I really wish I met you when I was applying because I literally was just thinking, okay, which institution is reputable in nursing in the US? And I looked at Hopkins, I looked at I think UPenn, and then a certain school in California because I like California weather. The- Now I'm laughing at myself because those were far from the truth. And then one other thing I considered was funding. I was looking for an institution that would fund my education. But when it came to a mentor, it was among the bottom of the list. But it's because I didn't know better. Looking back, I fully agree with you. After the PhD program, and even into the postdoc phase, I know for sure having the right mentor is a priority in graduate school. So thank you so much for emphasizing that. I Now, let's say somebody has done all the above. The next thing is they are ready for to apply and they want to submit a competitive application. What would make a candidate stand out? What would make their application stand out? Are there any mistakes or pitfalls that they should be looking out for when they are applying? How could they prep before they finally are ready for this moment when they are submitting applications? I really want to hear what recommendations you have because the world right now, the graduate school world is very competitive, but I also believe in the potential of everyone. So I want to hear what you have to say on this one.
Yeah, and I talk to people a lot and read a lot of personal statements, CVs just on my own time when people reach out, especially Black women trying to get into the space or figure out what's next in this current political climate. And I think the number one thing that stands out for me is authenticity, like to be authentic and to show that why are you the person to do this work? I personally just only applied to Hopkins for grad school. Um, and I think looking back, if I was reading my application, it was very clear. Like, I'm doing this work clinically. I'm a Black woman. This is what I'm seeing Black women are constantly doing or constantly having as a healthcare outcome. And there's confusion. These are the steps I tried to take to address this from a clinical standpoint, and I'm stuck, and we need answers. It was a clear story. It was, yes, you have to have the CV. It is competitive. Like that, I'll never deny. You have to have the CV to back it up. You have to have some levels of credentials. I don't personally think you have to have publications. I did not have publications. I was a clinician. Um, it just needs to make sense. But your story, I think, is what people gravitate to. Storytelling is huge right now, and it's for a reason. People remember what they could resonate with or what something that captivates their attention. And that needs to be clear within the first couple lines. Make it impactful. Um, I'm not one to really promote like trauma porn. I don't think people need to tell like their deepest, darkest, most traumatic experiences in order to get scholarships or access. I think that's very problematic in the frameworks of applications. But I do think showcasing why you is important. And I think that could only be done through compelling storytelling and being able to make it make sense concisely. And I think during that work and refining it, you'll also start to think, okay, why am I doing this and why this place? Because then you're trying to fit to that. So then it has to also make sense for you. So it's a good exercise to do in the process.
Excellent responses, Bernice. You remind me of stories I see on YouTube and other social media from grass to grace. Grad school doesn't need that. We acknowledge that people go through such stuff, but when admissions committees are reviewing your applications or reviewing all applications, they really want to see what Bernice just mentioned. They want to look at your unique story, your contribution to let's say your community, how has your past experience prepared you for this moment? And it prepares you in so many ways. It can be through challenges, it can be through success stories, actually. So it doesn't all have to be dark, but just know you have a story, you have the potential to contribute to the science, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Thank
And
you,
to
Brent. Mhm.
like how it has prepared you, your journey, and also how it has not prepared you. That was one of my points in my application. It's like
Mhm.
I was trained as a clinician. I practice evidence-based medicine, and the evidence is falling short. I have not been trained in this way to generate new knowledge, and we need the knowledge because Black women are dying. And that is a could be a compelling story. Not only what you have received is also what you have not received, and being able to identify that gap in your training is something that's transferable that could help you identify the gap in the literature as well to move the science forward.
Thank you. So before we move on to something else on funding, is there any other thing we may have left out on preparing competitive applications?
Yeah, I think also this whole, I hear sometimes people say, I've applied to like 30 schools or 50 schools. I don't, I mean, I think that might be specialty specific. I speak a lot to nursing and people in psychology. I
Mhm.
think that just shows a lack of direction and a scarcity mindset, which you cannot have pursuing a PhD. Like you just cannot start off feeling that way because there's so much hierarchy and levels of disenfranchisement that occurs in the PhD journey. You have to have some awareness and assessment going on in that process. So I think sitting down and maybe having a handful of schools you'll apply to and making sure to reach out to the faculty and not like one of these AI generated boiler emails. Actually read their work, actually like look at what they're doing on the websites, on threads, like get to know them and then pick a few to reach out to as a potential mentor and see what that vibe is. Do they have time for you? Do they leave you on read? Talk to some of their current students. We're usually on their websites. Reach out to them. And I think that could help make your application experience a little bit more less daunting and a little bit practical and aligned with yourself. Kind of treat it like dating. I mean, you're not going, I mean, I would hope you're not going on 50 million dates with just anyone who asks. So I would think you would be like, okay, he's a little cute. There's a little bit of a vibe there. Like there gotta be something, you know? So treat it kind of like that. Vet it, feel it out, and go from there.
Mhm. Thank you. That's a very good analogy. I hope the audience remembers this one. So, one thing I really struggled with as a first generation scholar was a scarcity mindset. I remember applying to 12 undergraduate schools, getting into maybe about five, including the wait list, and we were told that was the trend. So sometimes people have had misleading information, but honestly, it's better to have five great applications or even just two excellent applications. You have looked at faculty profiles, like Bernice has mentioned. It's the correct program for you based on your goals and objectives, and it has everything that you wanted. So I think it all goes back to preparation and then just avoiding the scarcity mindset. This world has enough for everyone. You just need to be strategic. I don't want to give that to you. Let me just say we all need to be strategic. I think I'm still working on it too. It really takes a lot to overcome that scarcity mindset. In as much as these applications and graduate programs are competitive, you will find what's right for you and what's best for you. So thank you, Bernice. I just like that you brought up the idea of, hey, avoid that scarcity mindset. Thank you. You read my mind. I mentioned it in the previous podcast. So thank you. It just shows that we are in sync. I'm so glad that you're here. Um, eh, um, can we move on to talking about funding, Bernice, if there are no other recommendations to strengthen somebody's application? How do you finance graduate school? Feel free to, by the way, go back and forth. This is a very open space. If you remember something, chip in before you move on to the next thing. Graduate school is expensive. It costs thousands of dollars. And like I mentioned, it was one of the huge considerations for me. How do you find graduate school funding? What are the opportunities out there for students? What advice do you have? Just tell it to us, Bernice.
Yeah, so with funding, Hopkins, it was a funded program. And when I say funded, is our tuition is covered, and we get a stipend. To me, I will say, it is not a livable stipend or wage. As I mentioned, I was practicing prior to this, so I've had a career. So I was used to making a certain amount of money and living to a certain level of standard. And I also had a dog. I'm not married. I don't have children. So that wasn't a point of consideration for me. You definitely have a family. It's definitely something to consider. How much is the stipend? And many schools who are fully funded go by the NIH level stipend. I couldn't even tell you what it was because it was maybe, I don't think it was $50,000. I don't think when we started it was. So I'm not from Maryland, so considering you had to move, get a place and things of that nature, I find Baltimore to be pretty expensive from a rental standpoint, but I'm not sure. I never rented before. So I'm just giving all the caveats to really situate my situation to help understand the lens that I'm coming in from this. So I continued practicing to a certain extent. I had to cut down to make it through the program, but I continued practicing. I still had my home in Connecticut. I have my home here. I have my dog, and I still needed to exist and live. But beyond that, practicing, there's scholarships. So I also applied to the National League of Nursing, and this is very lens because that's the lane that I operated within. So I applied for the National League of Nursing, which gives you directly the money, and it was $8,000 scholarship. Then there's the Nursing Education Fund, NEF, which was also a different $8,000. There's several scholarships out there. There's the Sigma grant as well, and then there's multiple grants. So during my time as a pre-doc, I applied to multiple grants. I had 4 different ones. I had a CFARS, Center for AIDS Research grant from Hopkins. I had a NIH R36 grant. I had a Surgeon General COOP grant, which is a federal grant that I received from Indiana University. And then I had an Ishwish grant, a society grant. So there's many ways to fund your actual work. But writing grants also takes a lot of time. It's a skill set. We take a course around it. It's time consuming, and it also has to align with your story. So your research story. So you really can't do that the first year unless you come in already have had that experience. So those are just some of the different funding streams. Became really good at chasing funding because when we came out of Hopkins, that's integral to training. I know I talked to people at other institutions where they're like, oh, we didn't have to apply for grants. We didn't. At Hopkins, grants is literally ingrained in us. I have negatives and positives around my thoughts around that. but it was just how I was trained. So it's what I did is, and then also being a clinician who worked with the Ryan White program, I was used to like federal grants and measures and outputs. So I came in with some levels of that like understanding.
Thank you so much, Bernice, for mentioning those grant opportunities. I really hope some of the audience watching this will apply for those opportunities. And yes, go ahead.
I had one other thing. I mentioned practicing and scaling back. So at some point in your PhD, you also gain expertise and experience, and people will reach out to you for talking engagements, speaking engagements, different things. You could monetize that. So monetizing your knowledge, don't just give it away for free. I did many free things, but I also became a speaker. And especially once you're a candidate, you can absolutely monetize that. If people want to talk to me more about that journey and how to really position yourself for those opportunities and potential consulting, I'm happy to have those conversations. That was also like a huge relief for me as far as like financing my life outside of these very structured mechanisms.
Excellent. Congratulations. I didn't know that about you. I should have asked, I guess. But
Yes.
you are very successful, according to me, in acquiring so many grants. I think in our cohort, you're probably among the top five. Those are very many grant mechanisms that you explored. It just shows how curious you are, not just in creating knowledge in nursing science, but also wanting to continue the science because research needs money. So I'm so glad you built that skill and you ran with it and even went far beyond to even consulting and just helping people know about these opportunities. One thing I know about Bernice, she is very generous with information. So if you have any questions regarding what she has said, please let me know and I'll make sure she responds to your questions. So, Bernice, now let's say somebody has landed in a graduate school opportunity. You've talked about some of the milestones they have to reach as graduate students, but I really want to know how you ended up being successful in graduate school. I'm sure you had to be very disciplined. You had to implement some new routines in your own schedule. Could you please tell me how to be successful as a graduate student who's just starting out or in the middle of it already?
I don't know. There's a million ways for success. I originally thought, graduate school, especially a PhD, like the terminal initial degree, um, I thought it was just about intelligence. But once you kind of get into these spaces, if you realize it's not at all about intelligence. Yes, of course, you have to have some wits about you, but like you mentioned earlier, it's about a strategy and persistence. And I think a lot of my success is levels of righteous rage. I get frustrated and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And once I start getting into that, what the hell is going on, I'm able to like lock in and say, okay, I get into this mode where it's like, okay, we need to sit down, figure this and go from there. Once I'm in that me versus me mode, I could persevere. That of course I never want to promote grit and resilience, but unfortunately, as Black women, as Black and Brown people in academia, grit and resilience is a requirement for survival. It's just how the system is until the system is dismantled, which I am 1,000% all for. Um, it's just part of the requirement. And I think I have had enough experiences where that has been required to where I am able to lock in and do the hard things, even at the expense of a lot of things. So I hate to romanticize success because you see a lot of people who do like what you call them, influencers who say, oh, this is the success I've had and the glitz and the glamour, and they don't talk about the hard things. They don't talk about the late nights, the relationships fails, the friends you don't talk to for a long period of time. I like for to write R36 grant in year three, I tuned out the whole world for 3 months. I was writing for hours. Like there was only a few friends I would like be on like Zooms to do like coding sessions with and wrote for like 10-hour days. Like I sent my dog home to Connecticut to be with my family because I said I need to lock in. And I was in a very, frustrated and dark space at that time. I was frustrated about what I perceived was lacking in some of my experiences at Hopkins. And I was upset. And that level of being upset was what led to lock in, write my grant, and resurface 3 months later and say, I did this and reached out to my mentorship team to say, hey, this is what I've written. And for me to get scored 16 the first time and to get funded, at some point you just kind of bet on yourself and go from there. But it's really, for my story at least, it was a lot of grit and just frustration and determination.
Yeah, I can relate to at some point feeling like this is it. I'm on my own. I gotta make this work. And the sacrifice that I had to make at some point. There is a time I was in the office every day of the week, except Sunday at 7 a.m. I was fortunate to be re living really close to our institution, the School of Nursing. But that took a lot of discipline. So I really applaud you for the sacrifices that you made to get that grant. 16 is a very good score, considering it was your first submission, right?
Yes, yes. And it was a
Yeah.
pivot because we're often told to do the F-31, which is like
Mhm.
that mentorship grant. Um,
Yes.
and so I decided not to do a F-31 because I was year three. I've already taken so many credits and I wanted that extra pile of money to be able to fund my research where I wasn't going to be dependent on the mercies of other people to help fund my research. So I knew that. So I was in a very much me versus me. I said, I am all I got. I need to really figure this out. So I'm going for an R36 mechanism, and this is what I'm doing and moving forward. There was a student at Columbia, Dr. Dominique Reed, who shared a copy of her R36 because I had it, most of us at Hopkins do F-31s. So she was able to share a copy just so I could see what that would look like and how much money comes with it. And yeah, it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't want to glamorize having to be fueled in that way. I think the better way is through support, is through not hand holding, because you have to have a level of independence as a PhD,
Yeah.
but doesn't have to be as toxic as it is. It does not have to be as isolating or as like sacrificial as it is. But just for transparency, that's just what my journey looked like and the persistence that required for people perceived to be like ultimate success at this point.
Mhm. Yeah, great work on that. And besides applying for grants, I know you are very successful at publishing. And I think you alluded to it. You really were collaborating with people, asking people for sample grant applications. So one thing I want people to know is that in graduate schools, it can feel like you're on your own, which really is true because your output is dependent on your effort, just like anything else. But people are very generous also. Find the people that support you. One of the things that I really want you to comment on, Bernice, is if there were any other setbacks. Imposter syndrome is very common in graduate school. Is there any, you may not have struggled with it, but did you at any point learn about it and how people manage it if you didn't have to deal with it?
Yeah, I actually don't believe in imposter syndrome. I think what we label or what we tell people is imposter syndrome is usually just them feeling marginalized within a system that is designed to marginalize them. Of course, a Black woman does not feel like she fits in a classroom where she's either the only or she's having to push back on textbooks that say Black women or Black people don't feel pain or they feel pain differently. That's
Mhm.
not imposter syndrome, her feeling challenged in that setting or not finding her voice in that setting. We create these power structures
Mhm.
for a reason. So to tell someone because they struggle to find a voice or to find their position within a system that's designed based on power and you have disenfranchised them, I just think is that's an ultimate level of gaslighting that's literally needs to be studied and is probably being studied somewhere. So I don't really adapt that. Have I felt insecurities? Of course. We're at Hopkins. There's people who are brilliant who have come in with tons of publications or they've already been in the research world for years before you. So of course I've felt intimidated. I felt insecure about certain things. I struggle to think, okay, what is my contribution here, especially
Mhm.
as things pivot and change. But I've always been somebody who's been big on community. Culturally, like community is a huge aspect of my way of life. So I just always lean in on those things. I do think people can be generous, but I also think people gatekeep and people become competitive with each other. And I find that sometimes happens even among us as marginalized people because these systems tell us only one can exist. So we're all fighting for that one position or that one opportunity when that's not true. One person could get a grant, but that's not stopping all of us from collaborating or being on each other's papers. And so we all benefit from that one person being there. But if that one person's there and they the door, then that is what continues to create these things. And I'm not blaming the marginalized people. We're just operating within these larger systems, but this is the domino effect of how things go. So how I tell people self to deal with, insecurities and challenges with dealing with systemic oppression and marginalization. One is definitely therapy because we're not going to just overcome and kumbaya our ways out of these very deep entrenched things. And two, it's community. You cannot do these journeys alone. It is literally impossible without losing your mind, losing your soul, and losing so many things before you come to grips with that. So, finding the people in your tribe and making sure you value that community above all. You value that above an additional publication. You don't allow yourself to be weaponized because you will learn to regret it. And it is going to create isolation. And in isolation, that's when you become even more vulnerable. I just tweeted or threaded, whatever the saying is for threads, that having proximity or having like certain privilege, whether that's economic privileges, academic privileges, puts you in closer proximity to white supremacy, it doesn't protect you or buffer you from white supremacy. Being closer to systems that are harmful, it actually makes you more vulnerable. So you need to have a sense of community about you to safeguard yourself in spaces like that. So that's my recommendation for that.
Thank you. I really like how you put it. I'm gonna ask the listeners to follow you so they can see you are a great writer. They have to see that thread. I'm sure it is well thought out and well put. And thank you for mentioning about imposter syndrome and how some of these things get labeled and then we just identify with them without even conceptualizing the meaning. It is okay to feel a little, I don't want to say out of place. It's okay to feel inexperienced and not well knowledgeable about a topic, but it's not okay to settle. I want to emphasize that I believe in people's potential, and I know, Bernice, you are a very strong advocate, and if something is not right, you're gonna speak up. But I am gonna encourage people who are a little shy about me about challenging the system sometimes to approach people like Bernice, who will really, you know, face people that need to be challenged or speak to people that need to uh, change the system to accommodate people from the minority groups, first generation scholars like me, and to make the system fair. I like fairness and justice, and that's the world I want to see. So even in grad school, guys, do not forget to fight for what is right because these structures that are in graduate school will be here for ages. And if we get comfortable with that, the next generation is going to have to deal with it. And it becomes a cycle. Anyway, Bernice, we are running out of time, but could you comment on preparing the life after graduation?
So preparing for life after
Yeah,
graduation.
preparing for life after graduation, because that's important for students going into graduate school. Sometimes people start out and not knowing what they want to do after. So, how did you prepare, and what are some of the valuable lessons that you've learned in preparation for life after graduate school and also after postdoc?
Yeah, I think you this is something you don't necessarily like prepare for in one moment of time. All of this stuff is about relationships, so you build this over time. So even my current postdoc mentor, I met her during my pre-doc at a conference and was talking to her about this strategy. It's like this mystery thing that we always tell people, you need strategy, we need strategy, but no one really gives you what that strategy is. So having these relationships as building blocks along the journey is important. So keeping in touch with people, reaching out to people, that's how opportunities come around. I ended up at a gala, and that's when I found out about the T32 I'm currently in. So there, it's all about the relationships. And also, if you're looking for a career in academia, as much as I don't like the notion that publish or perish, publishing matters. And it's not, don't just collect publications to collect publications, because then it's not going to make sense from a bio sketch standpoint. Make it make sense. Start to reach out and meet and collaborate with these people that are doing the work that you aspire to do, the potential future mentors. See what paper they have in the pipeline, see what data they are sitting on that they're so busy dealing with this current political climate, they don't have time to publish. See if you join their research team ahead of time to start publishing and finding your voice, getting comfortable with data and literature. And networking. I always say your network is literally your net worth. Don't just collect business cards at conferences and never reach out to people. Actually build genuine relationships. Once a quarter, if it's people I reached out to, I reach out to people, even if it's just on LinkedIn, like, hey, how are you? Or sharing something they've done, or putting them on my Google Scholar reminders just to keep up with people and see what they're doing, and making sure you're actually invested in them as you expect them to be invested in you and your work. And yeah, and confidence is built over time. So just with do it feeling not ready. And it's okay if you feel like you don't belong in these spaces, because I think ultimately they're designed for you not to belong. They're not necessarily made for us, but you deserve to be there. And I think that's different than needing the validation from these institutions.
Thank you for that, Bernice. Any other thing you would like to share that we didn't cover? You've talked quite a bit about lessons along the way, so I don't want to repeat that. Anything you may have left out that would really be important for somebody looking into graduate school?
Um, I think I will just end on knowing that comparison is the thief of joy. You know, we often look at each other's applications, each other's CVs. I think it's important, yes, to see, representation matters, but also to know that your uniqueness is what makes you a standout candidate, is what makes you unique. So finding out what you unique and building that relationship with yourself and not comparing yourself to others will save you a lot of stress, a lot of moments of not having joy, really help you carve out your story and stand out. So thank you so much, Joy, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernice. Uh, just before you go, I want to do a little rapid fire here. Just for the audience who would want to connect with you, and they can probably refer to this. So, do you like coffee or tea?
Coffee. Couldn't survive it without it.
I can almost tell the answer to the next one, having worked with you, but morning or night productivity?
Night owl.
I knew that one. What's your best productivity tool?
Ooh, do not disturb on my iPhone.
I thought you were gonna say OneNote. I know you like OneNote because it helps you
Oh,
stay organized.
yes. And I haven't used OneNote in a while. That fell off my track. Year four.
What's your best purchase under $100 that helped you during graduate school?
Ooh, under $100. Ooh, best purchase under $100. Ooh.
Well, you
Don't know.
can
I don't know that.
you can pass that one. Okay, one book every graduate student should read. I know you're a great reader.
Ooh, oh, there's so much. Ooh, this just came out. Kimberly Crenshaw's book, Back Talker. I
But
went to her book, excellent book, Back Talker.
I saw you carrying that one around, so I need to get it for myself.
Yes, excellent
What
book.
Thanks. One habit that made the biggest difference.
Time blocking and using a calendar.
Great. One myth about graduate school.
The smartest person wins. It's a lie.
That's so true, especially in graduate school.
Yes.
One skill everyone should develop before graduate school. Before graduating, sorry.
Ooh, networking.
Oh, that I would have said the same. So, thank you very much, Bernice. This was really great. You have shared great insights that are not just beneficial to the audience, but also beneficial to me. So, thank you. I really appreciate it. So, if somebody is watching today or after this YouTube live session, just know that PhD and master's programs are available for everyone. Do not be afraid and take all the advices that Bernice has given you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. And thank you for joining the Research and Life podcast. And thank you, Bernice. By the way, I really like your Zoom background. That
Thank you.
inspires me a
That
lot.
might be my under $100, a Canva subscription.
Oh,
So then
thank
you can
you.
make things like this.
You made it through Canva?
Yes, it's my wall of giants, Black women who have been inspirational throughout my life and journey. And I put them up on here for motivation, and they're behind me, kind of like an ancestral thing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate your response. I'll definitely consider wall art. That is really great. I love opera and I love the hairstyles I'm seeing there. So I'm gonna definitely going to be looking into them. Anyway, I don't want to take much of your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, Brittany. Thank you.